Well, I just went to the store, and I'd like to say the bread here, well, actually a lot of things here, but this bread is so much better than any baguette in California. I don't have butter. I don't want to spend the money on butter. Good thing is, you don't need butter because the bread is so good. Well, I went shopping. I bought, I don't know, some pasta. It will probably last me quite a while. Bought some soy sauce, that'll last me a long time. Bought milk chocolate. Probably won't last as long. And Pringles. Don't think that'll last long either. I try to ration it out, right? Like sweets and salty things, and everything else is very basic, like Brussels sprouts. They're only 50p for a bag, and that's like 2 servings of vegetables for 50p, and a lot cheaper than green beans. That's what I bought. I'm sorry. Chewing my mouthful, ain't I? Sorry about that. There was something I was going to mention earlier, it slipped my mind. Well, for one thing, I'm sorry, really. My seminar today, which is like a discussion section, for my History of British Cinema course module. We had a seminar today, and in the States, you know, they're having like TAs and teacher's assistants, unless you're in the honour section, then you're really special and you get to go with the professor. But here, like my other seminars with the professor, and this one, there's three professors doing it, I think. Well, there's the main one, and then he has 2, like, they're not exactly assistant professors, because, I mean, this man that we had today, he's retired, and he was, you know, teaching at Kent from the very beginning, I think. But they're just helping him out, and I mean, they all brilliant, know everything. Anyway, so I have this elderly man, and it was fantastic because all the stuff he was talking about, he was there. He was telling us, you know, like, oh, it's when I was studying the British New Wave, and I won't go into that because I know most of you probably aren't interested remotely in that, but we're talking about British New Wave cinema, and he was telling us about how, you know, oh, when these films came out, I saw them in the theatre, you know, I saw them in the cinema, and it's really hard to replicate, you know, like why it was so controversial and a lot of the things that were going on. But he was actually there, so he really, I mean, knew very much what he was talking about. And he also liked to talk a lot, which was fine with me because, I don't know, the only times he asked for participation questions were like, does this sound like a Yorkshireman to you? I'm not that good with it. And he'd be like, oh, does this remind you more of Margate or Ramsgate in the setting of the mise-en-scène? And I'd sit there and I'd be like, quite honestly, I haven't been to either. I'm sorry. So, you know, I didn't say anything, which was great because he talked for an hour and a half straight, just took off. Talked a little bit about the film we were working on. Talked a lot about the entire history of Britain from the Industrial Revolution to about 1972, right? Which was actually really nice because it's really great. It's phenomenal to hear the perspective of a people of their own history. And I also felt like he clarified more as British history, whereas in America, we say American history and we're talking about American history, but also I think we also get caught just calling it history a lot more. I don't think there's a sense of, you know, having to clarify what you're talking about quite so much, because I think to a lot of Americans, the only history that's really, like, relevant to them is American history. I mean, obviously that's not completely true, because, I mean, look at World War I and II and Cold War, all these things that clearly other nations are involved. But I just think the entire mindset is a lot different, and I just get the vibe that, because he not only taught us, and maybe it's just because I don't pay attention in the US, because I know that, like, we do address a lot of, like, well, in England, You know, they were learning how to use, you know, machinery long before we were, and all of that, which he did mention here, but I don't know, I think I might just be applying my own prejudices of what I could be seeing to what I am seeing, but I still feel like it's there, which makes me think that maybe it is. Anyway, so he talked kind of like I am now for an hour and a half, and it was a fantastic lesson in everything. Very interesting to see, and the fact that like they really accept the fact that you know, since they stopped being in control of the majority of the planet, a lot of things in Britain seem to have sucked, actually, quite a lot. He talks about, you know, like public education, like, yeah, that sucked. And then when a couple other universities pop up, but not everyone, he went to Cambridge, which is really nice, but basically the point was that, like, yeah, no, I don't know, we have such a, you know, deprecating, you know, self-deprecating sense of humour, like, we can really make fun of ourselves, because, you know, we were once the good, you know, Great Britain and all that, and now, well, we have really ruddy food. That's kind of a lot of the sense. And then I have things like one of my fashion magazines is really ultra natural, like nationalistic. I think I may have already mentioned this. I don't know. Talking about, you know, like British fashion, and it's so great. It's so innovative, and you know, we have all of these wonderful celebrities and stars and glamorous people. But the thing that struck me most was the fact that their standard of success was measured on whether or not they made it to America. Except maybe Vivienne Westwood. Fashion's a little bit different because it's kind of like, oh, we can compete with Paris. But most other things, it's like, oh, you know, we sent them to Hollywood. They made it to the big time. But really, there's not the same context. And that's this whole argument we're talking about with British New Wave cinema, too, is that basically the entire point of British New Wave cinema is to get away from the idealism that was portrayed. See, now I'm going into it anyway, isn't that delightful? They had all these, you know, like high-class officers sort of thing, always portrayed in, like, a lot of, you know, war dramas in the 1950s. And then around 1960, all of a sudden you start seeing, like, is that an ugly pregnant girl from Birmingham? You know? And totally different, like, trying to portray, you know, real life for the real working class, like the mass majority of people. But there's also, you know, criticisms about it, that it's not really doing that. And there's tons of criticisms, obviously. There's a lot of very critical people out there in the world. There was something else I was going to say about that before I got on the tangent about officers. I don't remember. Well, I guess the fact that, I mean, a lot of the criticism centered around the fact that, great, you know, we're going in a new direction in cinema, but it still sucks. That was pretty much the point of British cinema. In fact, thus far, like with the introduction and everything, I feel like my entire class is going to be history of British national cinema, i.e., why it's been mediocre for generations, because that certainly seems to be the direction we're heading in now, with like, we had hope in director blah blah blah, and yet, no, still no vision there. Or, oh, really innovative? No, that only lasted one film and it wasn't that good anyway. Basically, I think that's what British cinema is all about, but it's great because I'm learning it from actual British people in England. People who knew the people and were involved and alive and stuff at this time. And of course, they're all, you know, so self-deprecating. So it's really, no matter what, it's entertaining. In fact, it's funnier that they suck at things. No, they don't suck at things. I take that back. I personally don't think that. But in general, the belief is, at least in cinema, that British cinema sucked. That's what I'm getting out of it so far. And it didn't. Exactly. I mean, no, I'm not going to go into it, but basically, these people can make fun of themselves, which is something I think a lot of people can't do. A lot of nations can't do, but they certainly can here. One thing, though, before I go, is that this bread, I don't know, actually, it's a French bread, which is probably why it's so damn good, but it really is. Time is running out, my lovelies. I have a lot of really creative things going on in my mind as far as screenplays, and so if any of you are out there, when I get back home, if you're good at screwball comedy, let me know. Alright, ta-ta.